Welcome to Maine Voices Livestream. Before we begin, some messages from our sponsors.
Along the river's edge, there's a special place where advanced medicine and compassionate people meet a nurturing environment for healing. The new Northern Light Mercy Hospital, offering more services in one convenient location that's accessible to all, because Maine made us devoted to the health of our entire community.
The Portland area's trusted choice for senior living, Stroudwater Lodge, gives Maine seniors independence and families peace of mind. Residents enjoy chef-prepared meals, unique programming like beer brewing or classes led by local artists, along with all the maintenance-free benefits of community living. With their sister community, Avita, specializing in memory care on the same campus, Maine families have a wide variety of care options in a beautiful wooded setting, yet minutes from downtown Portland. To learn more, visit stroudwaterlodge.com.
And now we'll turn things over to Don Coulter.
Well, good evening, and thank you for joining us for Maine Voices Live. My name is Don Coulter. I'm the sports editor with the Portland Press Herald. And I think we'll have a very fun show for you this evening. We have three athletes who grew up in Maine, who recently participated in the Winter Olympics in Beijing. They are Sophia Laukli, Frankie Del Duca, and Clare Egan. And I'll tell you a little bit more about their backgrounds in a moment. And you'll have a chance to ask questions of them a little bit later in our show, and I'll explain that to you too. They will be interviewed tonight by my colleague, Len Jordan. But before we get further into the show, we would like to acknowledge, again, our sponsors of this series. They are Hub Furniture, Stroudwater Lodge, and Northern Light Health. And here from Northern Light Health to speak to us for a bit is Charlie Therian. Charlie is the president of Mercy Hospital.
Thank you, Don. We're very pleased to partner with Portland Press Herald as a sponsor for the Maine Voices series, as it fits very closely with our mission of making community connections. And on behalf of Mercy Hospital and our employees, I would like to really thank our Maine Olympians for their dedication and commitment in achieving such a high level of excellence and for representing our country. And along with all of our listeners this evening, I look forward to hearing their inspirational stories. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Charlie. And before I turn things over to Glenn, I'll give you just a little bit of background about our three Olympians here with us tonight. Sophia Laukli competed with the U.S. Ski team in cross-country skiing in Beijing. This was her first Olympics. And in fact, just 4 years ago, she was a senior at Yarmouth High School. She was, that year as a senior at Yarmouth, she was our selection as a varsity Maine Nordic Skier of the Year. And she's obviously made a very rapid ascent since then on the international scene. In fact, I believe just a little over a year ago, she competed in her first World Cup event, and she's done so well that she was able to earn a berth on the U.S. Olympic team as the second youngest member of the team. Like Sophia, Frankie Del Duca also competed in his first Olympics in February. Frankie is a bobsledder. He was a driver on the 2- and 4-man bobsled for the U.S. team. Frankie was born in Florida, and his family moved here to Maine when he was 10. They lived in Bethel. Frankie went to Telstar High School. He competed in various sports, soccer, skiing, track and field. And then he went on to be part of the track and field team at the University of Maine. But Frankie had never tried bobsledding until after college. He went for a tryout with the U.S. Bobsled team, where he was able to use his skills as a sprinter, first as a push athlete for the bobsleds, and then over the past couple of years as a driver. And then we have Clare Egan. Clare is a biathlete from Cape Elizabeth. Claire actually competed in her second Olympics this winter. She was part of the 2018 Olympics in South Korea. Claire, like Frankie, didn't take up what would be her Olympic sport until after college. When she was in high school, she ran cross country, and I believe she won several state championships in track and field, was in Nordic skiing, continued to ski while she was in college. But once she put the rifle piece of the sport of biathlon to her Nordic skills, she also made a very rapid ascent internationally. And in fact, coming into these Olympics, she was the top-rated US female biathlete in the world rankings going into Beijing. Before I turn it over to Glenn, I just want to let you know, in order to ask questions of our guests here tonight, we ask you to look at the bottom of your screen, and there's a Q&A button there. That's where you can submit questions, and we'll try to get to as many of those as we can before the end of the show. And now I turn it over to Press Herald sports writer and my pal, Glenn Jordan.
Thank you, Don. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. And Sophia and Claire and Frankie, thank you for being here. I hope you know the pride that the entire state feels in your accomplishments. I know that bobsledding and cross-country skiing and biathlon are not the most glamorous sports. They don't get the attention that, say, figure skating or ice hockey or that snowboarding with the nuclear things in the background got for the Olympics, but you rose to the top of your profession, your sports, and people in Maine take a lot of pride in that. So congratulations. I want to ask you, first of all, just your preparation, I guess, getting to the Olympics. It's been a pandemic. You're going to a country with an authoritarian government, and at least one of you was bringing guns there. Let's start with Sophia first. What was sort of the lead up for you into getting to China?
Yeah, so I came home to the US for a few weeks before I went to a pre-camp we had in Italy in Livigno, just because it was pretty important for us to acclimate to it was pretty high in Beijing that we were racing at, the elevation. And so we had a 10-day long camp in Italy. And it was obviously like we were being very strict with COVID. And so it was a pretty intense training camp in the fact that we were just skiing and then sitting in your room basically. But Livigno in Italy was like, I've never been there before, and it was a beautiful place. So that was my the short term, I guess, lead up into Beijing, just being super, super safe with COVID and trying to we weren't trying to overtrain, I guess, but we were trying to acclimate and I could just get ready for the races.
How about you, Frankie? What was it like, the lead up for you?
Well, once the team was announced, we were in St. Moritz, Switzerland for the last World Cup race, and the team was announced. And shortly after, we flew to Chula Vista. It's an Olympic training site in California, and it was for us to get our little bubble going where we can avoid COVID, much like the other sports. Just trying to stay as safe as possible, stay healthy, and then just get some good training in. Out in the sun in California. It felt like summer. So we got a little over a week of good training in, sprints and lifts, and then headed over to China.
All right. And Claire, you had some firearms to bring with you.
Yes.
Is that a bit of a challenge?
Always. First of all, I just want to thank the Portland Press Herald and Glenn for having us on. It's a really great opportunity for us to talk to our fans in Maine. So thanks everyone who's attending, and thanks Portland Press Herald for having us. My preparation was similar to Sophia's because cross-country skiing is also half a biathlon. A lot of our listeners, viewers may not know that all three of the sports that are featured here tonight, bobsled and cross-country skiing and biathlon, all have an annual World Cup season, which starts before Christmas, and at least in my sport, it goes until just over a week ago, in the end of March. And our World Cup tour takes us to all different countries around the world, mostly in Europe. And so I, like Sophia, was also based in Europe prior to heading to China. And I also was at an altitude camp in Italy where we were doing the same thing, trying to get ready to race at high altitude in China. Yep, and then of course, big travel day with a lot of equipment, including a firearm. It always makes for an exciting and lengthy travel day, but I was very, very happy when we finally made it to the Olympic Village in China.
All right. And so Sophia and Frankie, this was your first time at an Olympics, and I'm curious, what were your first impressions, Sophia, just in being there and experiencing it? You've been at a few World Cups. How is the Olympics different?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was really cool to be involved with, like, there were so many other sports in our village, and for me, that was really cool for me to, because I guess like World Cup circuit and just my sport in general is super niche, and so I'm never really around the normal athletes, I guess. And so it was really, really interesting. And there were so many people that I had heard of before, and it was really cool to see all of them there. And I'd say, like, I did my first World Cups a year ago, and that was incredibly eye-opening. And this was just a whole new level. And I didn't really go in trying to have a lot of expectations, but they somehow made Olympics way more elaborate and intense than World Cup. And so it wasn't like overwhelming. It was just really cool to see that there's even a higher level. Yeah.
And how about you, Frankie?
Well, it was very exciting getting there and seeing the track. The track is just outstanding. It's an amazing track. It's very technical. It's pretty challenging. And it's just beautiful. I'm used to warming up. Our sport is pretty blue collar. We warm up, in a parking lot. We get rained on, and then we go get in a sled and go 90 plus and just get, banged around. And here we're warming up, and there's heated floor. It's a beautiful brand new track. The facility was like, it was just outstanding. I've never seen anything like it. So I was pretty wowed by just how great and grand the venue was, and then just how technical the track was. I was pretty excited to get on it. I did not go to the test event earlier in the season like a lot of other countries and sleds did. So I was very excited to get on the track. But then when it came time to actually train and compete, I had this, I don't know what it was, if it was just from training for it and preparing for it for so long. I was just so focused, and I had this just the super focused feeling. It was pretty great to feel that, because it's our first Olympics, and I was like, am I going to have, a rush of emotions? Am I going to be, nervous? Am I going to be anxious? I didn't know, because I had never been to an Olympics. I had been to World Cups. I knew how I reacted there. And it was actually very similar. I just had this level of focus and just this desire and drive to just do my best. And I actually thought it was very similar to, a World Cup competition. There was just a lot of cameras, and people wanted to talk to me afterwards. We'd get interviewed after every training day. So I was like, oh, wow, this is new. So, but other than that, it was kind of pretty similar.
And I think you were the only one who was able to attend the opening ceremonies, right? Of the three of you. And tell me a little bit about that. I mean, that was before your competitions, right? What was that like?
It was. So we were in the Yanqing athlete village. So we were a couple hours away from the Beijing village where opening ceremonies were held. And we just got on a bus with all of our clothes on. It was crazy to just see other athletes, athletes I've looked up to and watched and rooted for. I was like chatting with Sean White, and we were just talking about how cool it was we made it, because I had seen him in Park City earlier in our careers, and it was just very eye-opening, and it was it was a little emotional just seeing the Olympic rings, and all of our jackets have the US flag, and we're walking out with teammates that are literally my teammates on the bobsled team, and then teammates from other sports. And it just kind of, there was a moment where I just kind of took it all in, and I saw, the big stadium and the sky and all these people next to me that we've worked so hard together to make this happen. And it was very it was a very fulfilling and kind of wholesome moment for me to just feel this deep sense of gratitude for everything that happened.
All right. And Claire, how was this different from Pyeongchang, if I'm pronouncing Pyeongchang correctly?
Well, the one thing that I really liked in our village in Beijing was that it had more of a village feel. It was kind of a cluster of smaller buildings with walking streets in between the buildings, and kind of this mall in the middle, and that had a really nice feel. The village that I was in Pyeongchang was just a cluster of 4, I think 15-story buildings. So that was cool too, but I enjoyed the village feel in Beijing. And I also really enjoyed getting to spend time with other athletes, including athletes from other sports and also athletes from other countries. The dining hall in the village in Beijing was, despite COVID, kind of just a normal dining hall. As you probably heard, the testing regimen inside the Olympic bubble was very strict. We all were tested every single day. And so because of that, once you were inside the bubble, you could be a little bit more relaxed with behaviors like eating with friends. And I really enjoyed that because I hadn't been able to do that in a couple years. Even in our World Cup and honestly, even within my own team because of our own COVID precautions. So that was something that I enjoyed. And that was kind of my first impression of getting to the village in Beijing.
And how much of the Olympic movement, I guess, is that shared experience with athletes from other countries, with the international interaction, and I mean, with your role, and I don't know how many people know this, but Claire is the chair of the athletes committee of the International Biathlon Union, elected by her peers. So plus she's what, 5, 6 languages she knows. So she's a great diplomat for the sport, I guess, too. But how much of that, I guess, is a part of the whole Olympic movement?
Well, for me, I think that's my favorite part, and it's really what sets the Olympics apart from any other event that we do. It's the global feel of the event, not only when you're in the event with the other athletes, but also from outside of the event. I mean, there's no other time when the whole world is really watching one event except for the Olympics. So that to me is the biggest difference between the Olympics and anything else, and also my favorite part.
All right. I want to talk to each of you about the first race that you went through. And Sophia, I'll start with you first, because your first race was on the very last day of competition, right? First of all, what did it feel like finally to get to the starting line? And then how was it, just all that, dealing with all that long wait, almost 3 weeks, I think?
Yeah, it was definitely not the easiest time for me. I think it was, I was an alternate for some of the other races, so I wasn't going in expecting, or there there was always like some shot I would have another race to do. And I think that almost helped in that I wasn't just staring at 3 weeks of absolutely nothing. And like, with that being said, like I had the 30K in mind, and I just got really focused about my training for that, and how I could race my best there, because I mean, that race, I guess I have done a couple 30Ks before, but I was really, really looking forward to that. Just a skate distance race is definitely my favorite thing to do. And so it ended up being like a long 3 weeks, and not just like COVID wise, you couldn't do a whole lot other than train, and you could do some minimal socializing, I guess. But like Claire said, the dining hall was super, super fun. And so I had that, and I also am still in school, and that did help pass the time. And the skiing, like the courses there were amazing. They're definitely one of my favorites. And so it was hard, but it was definitely manageable to pass the time.
And you and Claire got together a few times, or you did see each other because you were in the same?
We were in the same village, and yeah, our schedules were pretty similar. So we had quite a few meals together. Yeah, that was fun.
And your actual race, I mean, you did great. You were the third American out of 4, I think, and 15th in the top half of the field. And something a little crazy happened toward the end.
Yeah, I did have a little bit of a hiccup at the end. I think I was definitely a little bit tired after 30K, and it was that day was so incredibly windy. And there was just me being a little bit out of it, and the signs being blown in the snow. I just took the wrong turn at the very end of the race. And I went into the lap lane instead of the finish, and took a while to realize it. And so I got passed by a couple people. And I was really like in the middle of the race, and I was about to finish, and I was like, oh, this was a great race. Like I felt really good, and I was stoked with my result. And just to have that happen at the end, I was definitely pretty bummed in the moment, but I'm still, definitely really happy with the overall result and how I felt.
Great. And Frankie, normally you go to an Olympics, you've seen the track, or you've practiced, you know what it looks like, but I guess you had to go there and learn the whole course kind of on the fly, right? What was that like for you?
It was cool. There's a little bit of added kind of like, okay, you're here, it's time to figure it out. There's no excuses. You still need to perform, so let's go figure it out. So I walked the track and just kind of looked at turns, and the other US pilots gave me some notes from the ones that did go to the test event, which was super helpful, because I got to see kind of like where their head was at and what they had for their track notes. And then I went and looked at a couple turns, because the track actually changed a bit because the ice was so different. So we're looking at turns, and we're actually saying, I think I should try this, or I think I should try that before we go slide. So it was interesting, but I really liked that, because it forced me to grow as a driver or pilot. The names are kind of synonymous. Because I am pretty new. I was the least experienced in the field, so it kind of forced me to grow and not just go on the same few tracks that I've been going on. I went on 3 new tracks this year, and that was just another new track to go figure out. So yeah, like I said, it just forced me to apply kind of my instincts with driving, and then what I've been learning with bobsled in particular. And yeah, it was a rush. Your first time going from the top, you see the huge camera contraptions and the training. It's just it was a really cool experience, and I had a great time. So yeah.
Is there a big difference between piloting a two-person bobsled and a 4-person bobsled? Is it just weight or?
Yeah, it's a little different. The 2-man sled is quite nimble compared to the 4-man. The 4-man sled is a lot heavier. It's quite a bit longer, so it carries a lot more pressure, and it's very stable. But once it starts getting a little skiddy, it's hard to correct. Whereas the 2-man might be a little loose, but you can kind of keep it where you want it to go and kind of make these quick corrections. Where the 4-man is, you can put it on the perfect line, but once you're off it, you better get back on quick because it can get pretty hairy pretty quick.
Right. Right. And you were the top half of your fields in both races, right? Both events?
Yes. Yes, I was.
Feeling okay, great. All right. And Claire, your first race was the mixed relay. And tell us about that. Went pretty well, right?
Yeah, I am really happy with my performance in the mixed relay and my whole team's performance. The mixed relay is a fun event. It combines 2 men and 2 women, each doing their own biathlon race. And I went second, so I had my female teammate went first and then tagged me, and I moved our team from 11th into 4th, which was really exciting. It was very windy. This might come up as a consistent theme in our discussions tonight. It was very cold and very windy. If that wasn't clear on TV, we'll make it clear now. But I shot really well, and so that's why I was able to move up so much in that race. And we were in 3rd for a while. That was very exciting, and we ended up 7th out of about 20 teams, and that was actually the best result in that event for US Biathlon. So we were proud of that result, and I'm particularly proud of that race.
And can you explain to people what it's like trying to, I mean, just how big a target is, and sometimes you're standing, sometimes you're prone, and you're also doing this after skiing hard and breathing hard. How do you juggle that? How do you balance that?
Well, like you said, so we shoot in every race, we shoot prone, which is lying down, and also standing. So it goes ski, shoot, ski. That's how biathlon race works. When we shoot prone, the target, it's a black circle. It's about the size of an Oreo, and it's 50 meters away, which is similar to 50 yards. The target is it's the same distance away in standing, but it's a little bit bigger target. It's more like the size of a CD, because standing, it's a little bit more difficult position. You're obviously affected by something like wind much more when you're standing than lying down. So that's why the target's a little bit bigger in standing. It's still not easy to hit, especially when, like you said, when you're breathing really hard. So basically the way we kind of try to manage the shooting is that if we have our ski loop, it's usually between 2 and 3 kilometers. So what is that? 1.5 miles, something like that. And we ski that loop as fast as we can until we're maybe 200 meters, 20 seconds before the range. And then we take those 20 seconds to kind of coast into the range and slow our breathing down as much as possible, so that we can be still when we try to shoot. And that's of course really hard if it's windy and you're at high altitude and all those things. And then you go out and ski as hard as you can again. Repeat that same process for the standing shooting, and then ski as hard as you can to the finish.
And if it's cold, I mean, I go out cross country skiing and my fingers freeze. How do you? I mean, if you get cold, don't your fingers get cold too?
Yes, yeah, and it is one of the things when I started doing biathlon, coming from cross country skiing, I thought, I don't know if I can do this sport because it's so much colder than cross country skiing. The reason I felt colder is because when you're shooting, you can't wear a big jacket. So when we're training, we are almost always just wearing our really thin race suit. And when it's really cold, that is problematic. So to keep your hands warm, basically you want to do as much as you can to keep your core temperature warm. So that's a lot of layers of long underwear, definitely more than I would wear if I were doing a cross country ski race and didn't have to also shoot. And then you have to make use of hand warmers. I had 2 pairs of gloves and I had a hand warmer between the pairs of gloves. So that was my strategy, and it worked for me.
All right. Sophia, you had a lot of time in the Olympic Village and everything, and didn't actually you and Claire have there was like your own little opening ceremonies or among the American team or something away from, because I think there was a race. I think Claire had a race the next morning. Can you tell me a little bit about that, Sophia?
Yeah, so we didn't go because, yeah, like you said, there was a race the next day, and I mean, we were just pretty worried about COVID in general, so we didn't want to risk going there, even though, yeah, I mean, it would have been really cool. But yeah, we ended up having just a little walk around the village. There were actually a few other countries I think that joined too, and it was, for me, and like for I think the majority of the cross country team there, it was all of our first games, and so we were a little bit bummed about not going to the actual Olympic or opening ceremonies, and so it was really cool for us to have this little makeshift one and still dress up in the whole attire, which I really enjoyed. I enjoyed that the whole time there, just wearing all the stuff. But yeah, it was really, I mean, it was, I'm really glad we got to do that at least.
Yeah. What did you have a favorite moment or outside of your actual competition?
Oh man, I mean, I think I just really enjoyed the whole like dining setup, because I think there was a lot of talk going into it that we were just going to be locked in our rooms and not really being able to interact or meet any other athletes or anyone from other countries. And for me, that was really like, I looked forward to doing that every day and going and yeah, experiencing that.
Yeah. How about you, Frankie? Did you have a favorite moment or moments outside of the track?
I think it was trading pins, actually. It was kind of cool because every country gets a handful of pins that represent the country and maybe their sport as well. And it was part of that kind of bringing the world together thing that Claire was mentioning earlier. I just felt that people that I had never seen before, they had no idea who I was, but they were from a country far away and they wanted, a US bobsled pin, or they wanted to hear my story, and we would chat. How did you get into your sport? How long have you been doing it? And so it was just like a nice feeling, just getting to know some of the athletes and hearing their stories. And we have quite a bit in common. And yeah, it was a good feeling doing that.
And Claire, how about you? Did you have a favorite moment outside of that first race?
I first of all, I'll second what both Sophia and Frankie said. I enjoyed both of those things. Like I said, interacting with my friends, new and old, from other countries and other sports. And I also was lucky enough to be able to attend the closing ceremony. Oh, it seems like I may be having an internet problem. Hopefully everyone heard what I just said. But I got to go to the closing ceremony, and I really enjoyed that. That being in the stadium there, it's the famous Bird's Nest Stadium that was built for the 2008 Summer Olympics in Beijing. Being in there and seeing all of the kind of Olympic fanfare and all of the athletes and then a lot of dignitaries and the president of China, if that's his title, I don't know. It does make you realize that it's a really big deal to go to the Olympics. And I think it's very easy to get caught up in kind of the minutia of your sport and at the closing ceremony really reminded me of everything I have achieved just by being there. And so I really enjoyed that.
Great. And speaking of, it's a spectacle. It's a big thing, obviously. About a month before the Olympics, the U.S. announced a diplomatic boycott. Australia, Canada, Great Britain joined in. Does that sort of thing, when geopolitics mixes with sport, and there's calls for boycotting for humanitarian abuses from a host country. What does that affect you as an athlete, and what's your sort of view of that whole intersection of politics and sport?
I think you're asking me.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Claire.
That's okay.
But Sophia and Frankie, feel free to jump in after if you'd like. But I'm asking Claire because you've got some experience, and you're the oldest of the bunch here.
Yeah, sure.
This is your second Olympics.
You're bringing my age into this, Glenn. Come on.
I mean, you're the most experienced.
Of course, it affects athletes. In this particular. International Olympic Committee does have some guarantees of free speech written into their charter and their event hosting declaration, including the protection of free speech for Olympic during the Olympics in interviews in particular. But on the other hand, the host country does not have those same protections. And so I think it was confusing for athletes to know what was and was not allowed. But at the end of the day, you can tell athletes want to be there and they want to be doing their sport, and that's everybody's main focus. Everyone who is at the Olympics has one main focus, and it's to perform well. And all that other stuff is a distraction. In the case of China, the distraction was human rights. In the case of South Korea, the distraction was North Korea. There's always something, and we as athletes, we have to be prepared for that, and ready to handle those distractions, whatever they may be.
Okay, thank you. Frankie or Sophia, do you care to jump in there and add anything, or no? Okay. Well said. I'm wondering about the aftermath. Tell me, since and Sophia, let's go back to you. You didn't have a whole lot of time after the Olympics you didn't sit on a beach in the Caribbean or something. Tell us what you did shortly thereafter.
Yeah, I think so. I came right back I went back to the college circuit. So I had regionals, I think 5-ish days right after coming back from China. And definitely noticed the time change a bit, but I definitely appreciated it. I've heard a lot about past Olympians and kind of struggling with what to do right after the games. And so I luckily had these races and then NCAA champs 2 weeks right after to focus on. And so it was a little bit hectic, but I had something to look forward to, and I was still working towards something. And so, yeah, we had at-home NCAAs, I ended up having some good races there, and
you won one of them.
Which was very exciting. I was really happy about that. And our team, the University of Utah, also won, which was really cool to finally get to have. Working towards an individual title and the team title was really, really cool to do, and at home made it even more special, I guess. Yeah.
And for folks who don't know, Sophia started at Middlebury College and then transferred to the University of Utah, and you're a junior there now, right?
Yeah.
This is your first full year there, or your second? Okay.
Yeah, I came in the fall this past year.
Because the snow's better out west?
I don't know. The snow's kind of questionable everywhere. But yeah, there a lot of factors came in, and just the university here has been super accommodating to where I am with my skiing career, and that's made it possible for me to be able to do both skiing and school. So yeah, it's been really great.
And you're joining us from Salt Lake City, right?
Yes.
Okay. Great. And Frankie, tell me about what your season your competition season ended with the Olympics, right? It didn't continue. What did you do next?
It did. It ended right after the Olympics, and I went back to Lake Placid spent time with my wife. We've been married for almost a year, but have been apart more than we've been together, just because she was in graduate school and I was doing bobsled. So I had quite a bit to look forward to with the Olympics, but I had a lot to look forward to after the Olympics, where we get to celebrate my wife passing her nurse practitioner boards, and we did a little mini honeymoon type deal where we said, we spent so much time apart lately, we're going to spend all our time together in a little camper van. So we got in a camper van and went to Arizona and just did some like really beautiful hikes and just spent some real quality time together, seeing some beautiful scenery in the Grand Canyon, and yeah, just hanging out in a camper van, and yeah, it was great. So that's kind of what I recently got back from that trip, and so yeah, we've just been spending time, and yeah, it's been great.
You didn't ever have engine trouble and have to push it though?
No,
Did you? No, okay.
no, it was a nice little rental van, and yeah, it was great.
Yeah. All right. I hope my wife is watching this too, because I'm a van life fan.
Oh, vans are great. You can live in them. They're cheaper than a hotel and a rental car. What sales pitch do you need from me? Because I'll put one together, because I had a great time.
Okay. And Claire, your season kind of continued. You stayed over in Europe, right? Tell me about what went next for you, and hopefully you won't freeze on your bandwidth.
So after the Olympics, I flew directly to Finland. That's where our next World Cup was, and I would have liked to maybe have a week at home, but it just didn't make sense doing a 13-hour time difference one week and then a 7-hour time difference the next week. So I just went directly to Helsinki, hung out there for a week, and then on the weekend I actually got to watch Sophia's teammates, the other members of the cross country team who were competing on the World Cup in Lahti, Finland. That was fun to cheer for them. And then I had my own World Cup shortly thereafter in Kontiolahti, Finland. And we had 3 more World Cups. So we went to Finland, Estonia, and finished off our season in Norway. And then finally flew back to the US on the 22nd and just wrapped up the season and my career here in Lake Placid with US Biathlon Nationals.
And so you're retiring from the sport now. Can you tell me just the last race? There was kind of a neat thing in the last World Cup event, and I know it was your coach's idea, but you organized it. Can you tell us a little bit about what that was like?
Sure. So I was retiring this year. One of my teammates was as well, or 2 of my teammates. And so were a lot of other international athletes. It was just a big year for retirements. And my coach said, you guys should get together and ski a loop together after the last race or something like that. And I thought that was a good idea. So it was his idea, but I made it happen. I just, I got in touch with everybody and bought some champagne and got in touch with the stadium announcer so that after the last race was over in Oslo, it was a beautiful day, tons of spectators. They announced who was retiring, and we all kind of got together, had a toast, and then skied a loop of the course and got to wave to the fans. And they were giving us a standing ovation. It was so great to be able to share that with the other athletes and to give all these athletes their moment in the sun. Some athletes are on the podium regularly. There were 4 or 5 Japanese athletes who retired this year who have done years and years of World Cup racing. They've not been on a podium, but they got to be there getting a standing ovation from the Norwegian crowds. And not only those athletes, but all of us. I think there are about 20, somebody who's done 400 World Cup starts, that kind of thing. So I really enjoyed that, and I hope it will become a tradition every year for the athletes who are retiring to have that lap of honor at the end of their careers.
And how many World Cup starts did you have? 180?
I think it's 187.
Wow.
Over the course of almost 7 years.
Yeah. And I think we're going to go to questions first. But before we go to questions, let's go back to Sophia. And Sophia, what's the immediate future for you? What's next? You just finished your last races this weekend in British Columbia of the season. You're going to have a lengthy layoff now? What are you doing for the spring and summer?
Yeah, so I will probably take a little bit of time off, but I'm actually gonna start competing in some running races. And so I'll still start training for Nordic skiing like beginning of May again for next season. But I'm also gonna start competing in some mountain and trail running this summer. And so I'll shift training a little bit towards that. But yeah, the next couple weeks are gonna be very anti-skiing related and training related. I'm definitely pretty tired with the season. But yeah, next year I'll hopefully do some World Cups, and then also I still have a couple of more years of college skiing, and so I'll probably be back and forth in the US and Europe racing next year.
And the next Winter Olympics is where and when?
Yes, that'll be in Italy in 4 years, which I'm definitely hoping to be there too.
Okay. All right. And Frankie, what's on tap for you?
Well, I took some time off just with the traveling and hiking and all that. So I'll be training here pretty soon. I want to compete in bobsled for as long as I can. I feel like I'm so new to driving and I love it so much. It's tied to my soul. Like I love racing cars and go-karts and all this stuff. So to be racing bobsleds, to be a driver, it's so fulfilling to me. I never want to stop. So for me, I'm going to get back to training here pretty soon, and I can't. There's no telling how long I'll be able to compete, both with performance wise or health wise. All I know is I just want to keep doing it for as long as I can. So I'll be starting up training, easing back into the swing of things, and seeing what we can do this coming season and the upcoming quad.
And can you explain to people a little bit about you're in the Army Special training program or something that allows you to how are you able to make a living, I guess, as a bobsled driver to keep competing at this level?
It's a really unique program. It's the World Class Athlete program, and me being on Team USA, it kind of, they go hand in hand, where I went through the military schools and the basic training, and I got a military job, but my temporary duty right now is with Team USA, and my obligation is to compete and represent the military, the Army, and Team USA in international competition and go win some medals. So I've been doing my best with that, and it's a unique opportunity. I do get a military paycheck. Bobsled's expensive, so make a living is a little bit of a stretch, but I get to buy some of the equipment that I need, and it's afforded me the possibilities I have now of having the bobsled runners I have, and just being able to get the most out of my training, because unfortunately bobsled is pretty equipment demanding. It's kind of like an arms race, like with Formula One, and the teams are always battling to see who has the best sleds. So I'm doing my part to have the runners part of the equipment I can control, and it's really given me a huge opportunity. I'm very grateful for the program, and I would not be able to do this without them, because I simply couldn't afford to do it.
All right, thank you. And Claire, I'm not sure why you would want to leave the lucrative world of biathlon, but what's on tap for you? What's next?
I don't know. I don't have any plans. I'm looking for jobs. Visit my LinkedIn profile. If you're looking for someone to work for you, I'm looking for jobs. I really don't have any plans. I'm gonna rest here for a little while. Like Sophia said, it's been a long season and resting is really important. Yeah, then I'll see what's next.
But you're still staying on, right? You're gonna still have a ski boot in the biathlon world for at least another year, right?
Yep. So I was reelected in February for another term on the IBU Athletes Committee, and so I'll continue with that for as long as it takes to sort of get the new committee members rolling and make sure that it's sustainable, and I'm leaving behind a legacy that is self-sustaining and not just gonna fizzle and die. So I'm really glad that I'll continue to have that connection, and with my role on the IBU executive board, I'll have some trips to board meetings in Europe and biathlon races. So looking forward to that.
And can you tell us a little bit about what you've been able to accomplish? Like when you first, I don't know if there was an athlete rep before. There was, I think there was an athletes committee and everything, but you've dealt with a lot of things like doping and just how there was all kinds of corruption, I believe, in the previous IBU regime. Tell us about what it's been like as sort of the top the spokesperson for all the biathletes.
Yep. So like many endurance sports, biathlon, it has been plagued by doping. And leading up to the 2014 Olympics in Sochi, most people probably know that the host country, Russia, was running a doping operation. And a lot of athletes were caught, but a lot of athletes weren't caught. And in my sport, where biathlon is huge in Russia, absolutely huge, excuse me, there was some speculation that the International Biathlon Union was kind of turning a blind eye to some of the doping that was going on in our sport. And athletes, I'm proud to say that athletes in my sport didn't stand for it. We had, we wrote petitions, we demanded change, and I got elected in that year in 2018 after we had really started to push back against a very broken system. And since my election, I was really lucky that spring the IBU headquarters got raided by the police, and that sort of helped flush out most of the worst things that were going on there. But then in the last 4 years, we've done really a lot of work to bring the organization back from a total scandal crisis into an organization that I can be proud to be part of. So that involves too many steps really to get into, but an independent investigation, a new constitution, all of those things, and importantly, a lot more athlete representation and athlete voice inside the organization, because it tends to be the case that when the athletes are excluded, things don't work as they should. So I'm satisfied with the work that we've done, and there's more to be done. But we're definitely on a good path now. And that's really important. It's important to trust the system that you're part of. And when you have broken leadership and a broken system, then so many things will go wrong. But when you have good leadership and a system you can trust, the problems that you have, like doping, will always have it. But you can trust that those problems will be dealt with appropriately.
Great. So I've got some, thank you all. I've got some audience questions. We've got a little more time. Sophia, any advice for how to stay motivated during summer training?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I've found that just having something outside of skiing, whether that be like school, an internship, just some other like hobby, like that's really key for me to have something to pass or like use some of my mind and energy towards. I think like doing a lot of like cross training. Like it doesn't really have to be something that's perfect for Nordic training, but just doing activities that aren't just roller skiing and running and just, yeah, branching out a bit. I think that is huge and making those summer months pass by. Yeah.
So you're taking up pickleball then, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Yes. Yes. All right. Oh, I have another question. Or this is Jean Marvin. How did and why don't we start with Frankie on this one? How did growing up in Maine benefit your Olympic career? Was it, I guess, was being in Maine a help or a hindrance?
I would say it's the reason it happened entirely. Just from knowing that I could try out for bobsled, it happened from someone who did bobsled saying, yeah, man, they have combines just like a bunch of other sports. Just go try out. You might like it. You might be half decent. I don't know if I would have heard about that elsewhere. There's a chance, or I could have looked it up. You know, we could always play what if, but I know that it really kind of opened the door to me trying out. And then for me, it was just the adjustment to the weather was non-existent. We have a lot of people from Texas and Florida and California, and I feel for them when it's their first season and they're going through a brutal winter in upstate New York, or we're getting you know, some crazy weather in Europe where it's like freezing rain and stuff. And so for me, it benefited me there it was the same climate, you know, being used to the cold. It took me a while, but by the time I got used to it, I was already bobsledding. So that's how it contributed for me.
All right. Claire or Sophia, do you want to jump in on that as a Mainer? Anything? Oh, Claire's got her hand up. Yes.
I will say that I think the fact that I grew up in a state, and in fact in a town, where the only statue in my town is of an athlete, and it's a female athlete, and then that's Joan Benoit Samuelson. That really shaped my whole life. So I grew up in a place where I knew that a girl like me from Maine could be an athlete and could go to the Olympics and could be an Olympic gold medalist. And that is truly unique.
That's a great answer. Sophia, do you want to add to that or
Sure.
share your?
Yeah, I think I'm similar to Frankie, where I would not be here in my career if I didn't have my main connection. I think what made me fall in love with skiing and stick with it was my high school experience on the Yarmouth High School team. Like, I definitely had considered stopping skiing before high school and just pursuing something else, other sports. But I just had such a great time on that team and with my coach, Bob Morris, at the time. And I think for that reason, yeah, I'm still skiing today.
All right. I've got another question. Let's see. What element of participating with athletes from foreign countries influenced you the most? Well, I'm going to go ahead and start with you, Sophia.
Oh, sorry, I'm muted. Could you repeat that?
Sorry. What element of participating with athletes from foreign countries influenced you the most? I guess we sort of talked about that a little bit earlier about meeting the All International.
Yeah, I think it's definitely motivating to see everyone has a different training. Every country has different ways they train, and to see that everyone come together on the same playing field and all make it in the sport from different systems, I guess. It's encouraging, and it's also makes you want to learn, I guess. Yeah.
Frankie, any thoughts on that topic?
I do. Our sport's kind of, there's a real sense of camaraderie in our sport amongst our own team, but amongst the other teams as well. I don't know exactly what it is. I think it's just because we're all kind of in it together. It's a difficult sport. We crash, we can get pretty hurt. So we're working on our own sleds. We're moving these heavy sleds around. It's kind of like, we're grinding out there together. And so for me, like when someone crashes, it's inevitable. You don't want it to happen, but It does happen, and you could get very hurt. It's not just their own teammates running over to see if they're okay or checking in on them afterwards. It's, just about everyone. Hey, are you okay? Hope you feel all right and all that. And even offering tips like, hey, I noticed you did this in the turn. I mean, these are competitors, and they'll say, have you tried this or that? Or there'll be something simple, just a pat on the back, like, don't worry about it. You'll get them next time. And just kind of like that camaraderie and that compassion in the middle of fierce competition, because we all want to win, but we are bringing out the best in ourselves and then also in each other, and making sure we have each other's back as well.
All right. And I have Greg Garrick asks, he says, I have donated annually to the US OPF, I guess that's the US Olympic and Paralympic Foundation, for probably close to 20 years. Why should I continue to send them money? Do all Olympic athletes benefit from the monetary support, or just the high profile gymnastics and ice skating teams? Should we start with Claire?
Sure. So I'm not exactly familiar with the OPF, but I'm more familiar with the US OPC, which US Olympic and Paralympic Committee. So I'm guessing this is the fundraising arm of that. It's wonderful to donate to the US OPC or what is it called?
US OPF.
OPF. Because American athletes do not receive the same government support that almost all of our competitors do. We are supported by our national governing body, so US Biathlon for me, for example, which is supported by the US Olympic Committee. And the US Olympic Committee doesn't even receive funding from the government. They rely on private and corporate sponsorship for all of their money. So thank you for those donations. They do make it to, if not to athletes directly, a lot of money is given to sport governing bodies. I would, however, encourage people to look for athletes who are accepting donations personally and get involved with personal sponsorship of athletes. Athletes can often provide, really awesome brand ambassadorship and promotion on social. A lot of us have really big social media presence, and athletes do need that support, and especially, like you said, like the questioner said, the lower profile athletes and the athletes who maybe haven't quite made it to the Olympics yet, look for those too. So you could contact a national governing body of the sport that you're interested in and ask who their aspiring Olympic hopefuls are. Athletes would appreciate that.
All right. Well, I see by my clock that I've already run beyond our allotted time. I could talk to you guys all night. You are all fascinating and interesting and great representatives for Maine, for the country. But I'm going to sign off here. I'm going to have one closing remark here. But first, I just want to thank each of you for joining us and sharing your insights and your thoughts, and best of luck with whatever comes next. And to all the viewers who stay, or the readers/viewers who tuned in, thank you all for joining us, and thank you to the Olympic athletes for sharing their experiences. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.